As Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And of course, the problem with socialists themselves is they don't understand where money actually comes from. So what we see today, of course, is Bernie Sanders putting his ignorance on full display for the world to see in this exchange with Bernie Moreno over in the Senate. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
We got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Very richest people are becoming phenomenally richer. Working people are struggling. What's the solution? Well, obviously, the solution is to give massive tax breaks to the rich and make a very bad situation even worse. It is apparently not good enough that the top 1% today own more wealth than the bottom 90%. That is rather phenomenal. But in my Republican colleagues' eyes, the wealthy and the powerful need even more help. 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%, just not good enough. We could do better than that. So not only should the very wealthy be asked to pay their fair share of taxes, the Republicans believe that we should give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. So what we are looking at right now is a situation where Republicans want to give massive tax breaks to the rich and come up with programs to hurt our kids, our elderly, and working families.
I think we need to kind of go back in time for just a little bit, not quite as much as in Back to the Future. Let's just go back to 2020. There was an election in 2020. The Democrats gained control of the Senate and the White House. And what's been the result? During the 4 years of President Trump, his first term, it was never better for working class Americans. Real wage growth grew. The middle class was doing better. Our economy was doing fantastic. The Republicans had passed the TCJA, which gave tax relief to all Americans. And we received, and this is very important, the federal government received a record amount of revenue. So even though there was tax cuts for the wealthy was the headline. By the way, that line is as old as dirt, and it's totally false. While the tax rates were cut, tax revenue was at a record level. It would be fascinating if there was just one Democrat that acknowledged that we received a record amount of revenue in the federal coffers. Do you think to yourself, well, wait a second, like I'm a business guy, like if my revenue was at an all-time high and I was losing money, I'd say we have a huge expense problem. Like, oh my God, how could I get record revenue and yet have record deficits? Why? Because when you give Democrats control of our budget, what happens? I'll give you some examples. When my colleagues talk about how they defend the working class, I think the working class spoke pretty clearly on November 5th of 2024 and said, thank you, but no thank you. So what can happen in my old world of owning car dealerships? Mr. Chairman, you could walk into one of my dealerships, be a multimillionaire, pick out a beautiful custom-made Rolls-Royce Spectre where the audio system upgrade is $21,000. The logoed headrest in the back seat are $1,500. The umbrella with a logo could be 10 grand. You can lease that car. And thanks to the amazing and remarkable policies from the Democrat Party, the federal government will give you a check for $7,500. Think about that for just a second. That is a bill that became law called the Inflation Reduction Act, giving Rolls-Royce lease customers $7,500 lowers inflation, and every one of them voted for that bill. How did that bill become law, you ask? Did it get 60 votes? Rigorous debate? No. They did it through reconciliation. And Kamala Harris broke the tie-breaking vote so that multi-millionaires could have their 5th vehicle parked in Palm Beach with a check for $7,500 thanks to the U.S. taxpayer.
So Bernie Sanders is the perfect example of an American socialist. Don't forget, he has 3 mansions and is worth millions of dollars, and yet somehow still doesn't consider himself to be part of that elite class he's always bad-mouthing. And by the way, here's a big fallacy that the Democrats, the leftists, the socialists always tend to trot out, okay? Just because someone else has more, like the uber wealthy people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, etc., doesn't mean someone else has less. The economy is capable of always expanding. When someone builds something new and starts selling it, all of a sudden, bam, there's new money, new products, new revenue being generated, right? But of course, you have Bernie Sanders over here saying, oh, we have more and more billionaires who are just going to get more and more wealthy. But yeah, that tends to happen anyway, and I do not begrudge them for making all of that money. Now, do I personally believe in breaking up monopolies? Absolutely, but I don't want to limit a person's capacity to earn. Okay, and that, of course, is the big difference. And speaking about earning, all right, when we talk about tax revenue being generated, it's funny how when you actually lower taxes, you collect more in revenue. Let's come over here and take a look at Jimmy Carter. His last year in office, 1980, they collected $520 billion in total tax revenue. Now, let's compare that with Ronald Reagan. The last year of his first term, they collected $664 billion. That's more than $100 billion more. And he was able to do this despite decreasing tax revenue on individuals. Yes, down here you can see that the top individual income tax rate went from 70 to 50, and the top corporate rate went from 48 to 46. So reductions actually led to increased revenue. But of course, the left always loves to say the wealthy are not paying their fair share. Well, are you aware that the top 1% of earners in this country pay 40% of the tax revenue? 40%, just the top 1%, right? That is a huge discrepancy. But of course, they're not paying their fair share, right? If you really wanted to have a fair tax bracket, you would go for a flat tax so that everyone is paying the same amount. But that's not what the left actually wants. They just want to take more and more and more from the people who are actually successful in this country. And of course, the other big lie they always say is, oh, these were only tax breaks for the wealthy. Well, if you look back at these tax charts here, under Jimmy Carter, in that same time period I referenced earlier, look at the top 5% tax brackets for the lowest earners: 21%, 19%, 18%, 16%, 14%. Let's compare that under Ronald Reagan. The top 5, 16%, 15, 14, 12, 11. So even the people making the least amount of money still got at least a 3% tax break, and it actually increased the more money they made, which of course makes perfect sense because oftentimes the people at the lower end collect a whole lot in government subsidies. Okay, so all of it makes perfect sense to you and me. It's just the leftists who refuse to live in reality and want to blame the wealthy for their own spending habits. Okay, if you really want to help out the middle class in this country, you would stop printing money and causing massive inflation. You would encourage a closed border and hire American workers. And of course, you would most likely support bringing jobs back into America by possibly enacting Donald Trump's tariffs. But these are all facts the left finds simply too inconvenient to discuss. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.